What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Knife Show, where we dissect the human psyche and society. My name is Denzel Mensa. I'm an ENFJ.
And my name is Joyce, and I'm an INFJ. And today we're here to talk about planting seeds. And this is planting the seed of suggestion in someone's mind. So, not necessarily getting someone to do something right away or getting them to change their life in any dramatic way right now, but giving them the idea of changing their reality. And over time, that seed may or may not turn into a tree in which they decide to change the way that they see life or reality so that they can make a big change or a small change that leads to a big change in their life. So it's setting off the domino effect in their life by leaving that little piece of, hey, this is information you might want to percolate on, and one day you might choose to make this something more in your life.
Yeah, I find this topic to be extra fascinating because anybody who knows me knows that my most go to analogy is about seeds, about impregnating and about gardening, all of that. And I think that it's because there's such a beauty to that. And in a way, everything in life revolves around that, at least how it seems like from my head. So everything involving a seed and gardening and cultivating and stuff of that nature involves the nurturing aspect of it, and where did this all start and where is it going to go, and checking out the trajectory and what's necessary for this thing to grow, and providing the nutrients and all of that to be able to tend to it. Something about me is that ever since I was a kid, for as long as I could remember, I've always been aware of what seeds were being planted in my subconscious. And I know that's kind of like paradoxical in a way, because the subconscious by nature is known as the things, or the area of our mind that we are not conscious of. Granted, I do believe that NI as a function dances on the line of the subconscious. So it's not to say that NI users are aware of everything that's in their subconscious, but I do believe that they are tapped into, or they get as close to the gate or the fence, the boundary, as much as they possibly can ever since they were children. Like, just the way their mind is naturally wired, that they do have more of an ability to be able to peer over the fence and get glimpses of what's in their own subconscious, and then understanding those patterns to be able to understand what's in the subconscious of other people's. Then, once you start to integrate either SE with TE or SE with FE, then now you start to understand other ways on like how to not only see what's, like observing what's in the subconscious, but now using what you've observed to take action with it, and maybe planting a seed for something that's going to be built for your future, or planting a thought, planting motivation. I believe that, at least according to Antonia Dodge and Joel Mark Witt, FI, so when NI and FI are together, it's about planting a motivation. And then when NI and T are together, it's about planting a seed of thought. And these two, they're pretty similar, but they can actually pretty much like be like around the same thing. So I'm obviously more familiar with planting thoughts, and also being aware of what thoughts are being planted in my own head. So I'd like, for example, watch a movie. And from watching a movie, even though the movie may not necessarily be completely centered around this, I've always been aware of like, what is this movie trying to subconsciously like get me adjusted to, or like get me used to? Like, this is one that, like, even if it's in a subtle manner, that's probably going over everyone's head because they're so engrossed in the SE of the movie that they're not realizing like what's passing through all of the action and being planted in their heads. Like, I feel like I've always had people at my gates to be like, like, yeah, I'm engrossed in the movie, but I see what you're trying to put over here. What is that? What's in your bag? Okay, I guess that's all right to place here. That actually might be a good seed that will be fruitful and help grow over here. You can go past. I feel like I've always had such guards at my doors. And so if I see a movie and my guards are like, wait a minute, this is trying to plant the idea of violence against certain races in your head, then no, I'm not going to let that seed be planted in my mind. If this is even like such things as like, just to be candid, like porn, like certain types of porn, there's obviously like the types of porn that are like, in fact, most porn probably is like very dangerous and, like very, very in a way, I mean, we all know that like it does a lot of damage, and certain people, they watch it, especially at a young age, and then it starts planting a whole bunch of seeds that eventually they start to want to emulate because it grows. And some people, if you want to really go down the slippery slope, then you'll have certain like murderers and killers who act on these actions that have been nurtured in their minds, and now they are abusive towards their partners, or they're actually like killing people and raping people and stuff like that because they're acting on a fantasy seed that they've watched. Or to lower extents, people who have seen certain things and they have like pretty strange kinks. Not to kink shame, but like all of this is coming from seeds that are planted in your head. And if we're not careful of the content that we consume, the things that we see, and we don't guard what's being planted in our heads, or at least be careful of what's being planted in our heads, then I think that could be a recipe for disaster in the future. But just like there are bad seeds, there are also good seeds, and then there are also neutral seeds. And once you really get the hang of this stuff, then you're able to understand how to plant seeds in other people, which we will not be teaching how to do today. But we're just going to be talking about it. And yeah, I just thought that this would be a really interesting conversation between an ENFJ and an INFJ. So, Joyce, do you have any thoughts on that? Have you planted seeds before? Do you relate to what I said? If so, to what extent? I'm curious.
Yeah, introverted thinking has a really strong awareness of the thoughts in its mind. Combined with NI, you can see the future path of things. And so NI is constantly looking at that future picture, that future visualization or that vision, and it can see how things alter it and change the future vision or the future path of things. Like a small little tweak here leads to big changes in the trajectory of something down the path that it's on. And so oftentimes, if you're aware of the magnitude of shifts, you're aware of where things will go and where things will lead. It creates this ability to want to plant seeds that lead to plants that enrich life rather than detriment life. I do plant seeds, and I find it very important. And I wish people would also plant seeds with me too, because if they notice something that would strategically enhance my life, but I'm just not aware of it yet, maybe it's a blind spot at that moment, and if they were to enlighten me on their perspective, it would lead to a better pathway for me. I'd want someone to plant a seed. I may not be ready for it yet, but I might be ready for it down the path. And so I do for people what I wish would be done for myself. And so when I see a way that dominoes could fall in someone's life, the ripple effect, if this leads to this, it might lead to that. And so I want to help you create a life that your future self would be proud of. And so when I notice what that might be, like, your future self might be proud of if you're a little bit more confident about putting your art out there. I might nudge your friend, hey, you could put your art here, and figure out ways to help them become the artist that they want to be, so that they don't regret life at the end of their days. They're not at 90 years old and they regret never pursuing that future vision of themselves. Is oftentimes I plant seeds for the betterment of other people. If I think it'll help their dynamic, their relationship for FE reasons, I will plant that seed because I want the best for them. And sometimes to do that, you have to do it indirectly and not fully force them to do things. I think getting people to buy into their own decisions is extremely important. So I want them to be okay with what they're doing. And so sometimes I'll suggest something and let them choose. Because one of the things about really owning your choices is to be the one who has picked it. And so letting people the ability of choosing, hey, this is a seed and you choose if you want to grow it or if you want to water it. But here, I'll make it more aware to you. So I'll put neon signs pointing, hey, if you water the seed, this thing will grow. And so I give them a clearer pathway as to what they would want with their lives. And so that's abstract. So maybe we'll plant this in the ground just like seeds are in the ground. Think about it in terms of seeing your friends fight, and you know that friend A views the other friend like this, and then the friend C views the other person like that. And you have the missing piece because you have both sides of the story, and you're like, all right, if person A believes in these thoughts, then they're less likely to antagonize person C. And so if they just see this side, maybe they'll be more forgiving and merciful towards that person and understand that particular side a little better. So the ability to exist in paradox and to exist in the gray actually allows me to help others see the side that they could most easily digest, and so could help remedy the situation in some way. So it's almost like this ability to see perspectives allows you to shift and to help people as needed. It's a fluidity, it's a elasticity to changing yourself to what the situation needs. It's customizing your approach depending on what's happening. You know, what's happening in the extroverted sensing world right now, you can figure out a way to kind of, make FE adjustments so that it's going to be received as well as possible. Everything I do is with purpose and with intention. Everything is set up so that I don't create a future self that I will resent or hate. And I try to help people create lives in which they are proud of the person they are becoming. If they were to see themselves, from 90 to now, would they be proud of the choices that they're making that accumulate to a larger whole, a larger context of their lives? So yeah, those are my thoughts on the things that you mentioned, Denzel. But I'm wondering about your thoughts.
Yeah, that I fully resonate with all of what you said. I think and we talked about this in your metacognition video with Grace last year or two. If y'all want to go check that out, I'll have the link in the description. It was a really good video, and we really went deep with this whole notion of planting seeds and being tapped into the subconscious and things of that nature. But I think that one of the biggest things I've discovered is it takes a God complex to an extent to actually go to the extent of planting certain seeds, at least in another person's mind. Um, I feel like all NJs are tapped into understanding how seeds are growing, both in their mind and in other people's minds, some to varying degrees, depending on how much they've paid attention to that. Like there's a difference between a talent and a skill. I think that all NJs have a talent for it. And there are those who've like really curated that skill to be able to understand it even on a broader scale. Like now they're able to interpret dreams. Inception is a great example of planting a subconscious seed in someone's mind and all of that. Of course, you can't necessarily like jump into someone's dream in a way, but that's essentially what we're talking about right here. Like the idea of planting an idea in someone's head and making them think that it's their own, and then nurturing it in a way that now they're able to eat from that tree in their garden and the fruit that it produces. Now, are you planting that seed with good intentions? That's one of the biggest things that you should know. It's almost like an ethics behind this. And then secondly, do you really know what you're doing? And I feel like, that's where a lot of people fear, from my experience, because it's like, okay, how can we really trust you? And that's kind of where things get complex and tricky. Once again, like from my experience, because the times that I've planted seeds were times that had to be behind the door, because the biggest thing that I think every NJ deals with is doubt. not from themselves, but from other people. Other people will, because they're incapable of comprehending the NJ's ability, then they doubt the NJ. Like, how can you be so certain that this is going to happen? How can you be so certain that yada, yada, yada? Like, they doubt the intuition, and they don't want to kind of submit is probably a strong word, but they don't want to give in, I guess, to just trusting the NJ and knowing what they're doing. So from what I've noticed is, especially with ENJ types, is that ENJs kind of have to prove it. They have to prove that they are trustworthy in these aspects. And the only way that they can prove these things is by doing it behind doors, and then allowing things to happen. And then once accumulated enough, then they present the evidence and be like, "Hey, you remember when this happened? Yeah. And remember when this that happened?" And you present like 3 to 5 cases in the past that the person really distinctly remembers, and then you're like, "Yeah, I was behind all of that." Wait, what? And then it's like you look back and then you see, like, wait, that's why you said this. And that's why then when this happened, and they start to realize, like, shoot, you really did kind of like orchestrate everything. Why didn't you just tell me? And then they kind of probably get upset. Like, I could have been in on this with you. You didn't have to like go sneaking around, whatever, whatever. But then they also realize, like, well, if you would have told me, I would have started to doubt. I wouldn't have believed you. I would have started to say, like, this isn't going to work. And then my doubts is going to cause the plan to have a self-fulfilling prophecy where it doesn't work. Because in order for the plan to work, the people have to either be unaware, or so that they can, like, follow the script of the NJ's mind, or they have to fully trust the NJ, which the NJ can't trust that the people will fully trust them. And so that's where, like, it gets like very complex. And like you said, like, it's abstract. I think that we see this a lot with quite a few shows. Like, and I'll give like a few different NJ examples. So I believe if you watch the show Nine Perfect Strangers, Masha in that show, she is what I believe to be an INTJ, and you see her orchestrate things in this nature. I don't want to spoil any of the stuff in this show or any of the other shows I'm going to mention, so I'm only going to mention them. And if any of you guys want to go check them out, you can definitely check it out. But yeah, I believe that Masha is an INTJ, and I can totally understand, just with everybody else I'm going to mention, why people would get upset with these kind of characters. But at the same time, I also see where these characters are coming from and why they're so secretive with how they go about things, especially as a fellow NJ. So yeah, Masha, the way that she goes about things in Nine Perfect Strangers, as an INTJ. Another INJ, Norman from the Promised Neverland, the way that he, and even Ray, both, like Ray, who is an INTJ, like they both were very tapped into, okay, these seeds are being planted. This is the trajectory of where things are going to go. This is how, like, and Norman was huge on withholding information, because like throughout the show you see, like, hey Emma, if this happened, what would you do? And he's using that to refine and tweak whatever his strategy might be. And okay, Ray, what if this happened? What would you do? Like, he's really finding out how that with the FE, like, how is everybody going to respond to this, so that way I can better know and gauge what my plan is going to be. Okay, if I tell my plan now, then Ray is probably going to doubt it, use all of this TE, like it's not going to work, blah blah blah, and then it's going to really not work. So I have to keep this from Ray for the good of everyone else, which could piss off Ray until he sees that it's actually worked, and then it's like, wow, okay. Same with how Ray goes about things. I had to keep all of this information from you guys, but I planted this so that you guys can see this, and I knew that it would motivate you to want to do this, and boom, boom, boom. So you see how with Ray, and like Ray is an INTJ and Norman as an INFJ, they both are also doing this. I also believe that Raymond Reddington from The Blacklist, there's about 8 seasons now, but even from just the first few episodes, you can see how expertly he, as an ENFJ, is able to really plant seeds and like orchestrate things in a manner that's just like, mind blowing. And season after season, like he just everybody just is like kind of like puppets in his hands. And then lastly, for an ENTJ example, Paul Briggs, my honestly my favorite ENTJ fictional character from the show Graceland. You see how he orchestrates things, and he keeps a lot of information from his team because he knows that once again, even though he's the big boss, they wouldn't trust him. And so he has to carry out these plans and kind of use them as pawns in a way, not pawns, but he has to use them as like chess pieces, I would say, so they can do as they need to naturally. And then by the end, because they acted in a natural manner, unaware that there was something bigger orchestrated, it's like that they were unaware of until the end. Then they're like, whoa, wait, Paul was behind all of this. And after some time, the ESFP character, for example, Johnny, he's even starting to be like, hey, honestly, Paul does this all the time, but we should just trust him because he's always right. Like the only time that his plans mess up is when we doubt his plan. And it's hard for people to accept that a lot of times because again, like it's hard for them to orchestrate such a planet in that way. So it's like, if I can't even trust myself, how can I trust you? And I feel like that's where a lot of NJs might run into trouble, at least the NJs that actively try to plant these seeds. But yeah, I think that one of the biggest ethics, like I said, is your intentions. You have to know what your motivations, your own intentions are on why you're planting the seed. And you have to be really sure that, okay, before I execute this plan, is it pretty much foolproof? Do I have contingencies in place? Do I know like all of what's going on over here? Like, what if something unexpected might happen? Which, funny enough, I both in fiction and in real life, I've noticed that the unexpected usually comes from the higher stacked NE users. Like that's sometimes you can't really you can't really predict what they're gonna do. So you have to have lots of contingencies for them. But yeah, and I don't even know what to say about that one. Maybe Joyce will have something, but other than that though, yeah, like once you are able to really orchestrate a plan in that way, then I feel like that really begins to help NJs with knowing like when to execute a plan, how to do so, when is the right time to actually plant seeds, how many seeds do you plant, what kind of seeds are you planting, things of that nature.
And that can cause an NJ to do things like the knife show, where Denzel is like, hey, Joyce, you want to create the knife show? I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to try to plant the seeds so you can talk more and that I can get to know you more and that other people can get to know you more because you never talk about yourself. So I'm just going to set up a situation because with NISE that the situation, how it's engineered, will cause certain actualities in the SE. And so you're going to be very intentional with how you set up things almost, because if you ping that ball that way and then you ping it there, then it will land over there. And so you notice, hey, if I just create a situation where Joyce can talk more, then and so there's an element where NIS users like to impose reality on reality. And so they like to put their will and their intention into reality. And so sometimes you question, was it supposed to turn out this way? Or did the NIS user force that reality into the world because they saw this vision and they tried to make it a thing? Sometimes I'll plant seeds in other people in the form of gentle, like it'll be gentle in a way. So it's not always as forthright and bold as how an ENFJ would do it. It's sometimes through the pathway of philosophically challenging people too. But oftentimes I find ENFJs are a little better at being assertive with their wanting change. And so they're able to plant seeds in a more effective way. And over time, I've wanted to get better at this. So planting seeds is something that I want to do and I like to do, but I do it better quietly. So I'm better at the quiet planting rather than the conversational planting is something I'm getting better at, if that makes sense. I oftentimes I'm trying to get over my pushoverness, which is something I realize that I really struggle with, actually. Which you ruin your plans or your ENFJ God complex if you're too passive about it. So that is something that I am really. Mm.
I think I'm wondering, and I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just trying to understand. In my head, all seed planting must be done quietly. So I'm trying to understand, like maybe we just have different ideas of what quiet might be, because I don't view my seed planting as forthright and bold either, or else it wouldn't work. Because that's too obvious that, oh, this is what's happening. And if it becomes clear that this is what's happening, then obviously it's not going to happen, because now this is when all of a sudden the person's like facing doubts and it's like, what are your motivations? What are your intentions here? This is that. And it's just a lot going on over there. But what do you mean by that? Like maybe you as an INFJ, you're seeing it, you're seeing what I would still see as quiet as louder or forthright.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a matter of interpretation here. So with ENFJs, what I notice is if they're the type to want to plant seeds, they're good at having that conversational element, as in like they're good at tossing the seed and then seeing where the other person is at, and so they're able to make sure that that person is being directed to tend for the seed as needed. And so they're better at this constant maintenance of being able to, oh, that person's, misunderstanding that. So I'm going to make
Oh,
sure that they are able to get that so that they understand that the seed is there. Whereas I noticed with me, when I try to create situations where I want to influence or impact someone's life, I realize I'm a little too esoteric for the
hmm.
other person to fully understand the seed that I'm communicating. Because I project myself onto other people. Everyone does this. This is a human phenomenon. And so I think, oh, this is not esoteric because this is just how I speak. And so oftentimes the full message gets lost. And so I plant a seed, but then people see it as too esoteric to understand what the seed means. And so it gets lost in translation and those seeds just die because I expect people to be as to have the ability to understand the cryptic as well as I can.
Hmm.
And that's misunderstood. Actually, people need more guidance. People need more instruction on to what to do with the seeds. So oftentimes I communicate something so metaphorically or vaguely. Like I expect people, like I give them the seaweed and I give them the pebbles and I give them the water, I give them the fish and I give them the sand. I expect them to paint the fish tank with it. But
Hmm.
oftentimes people don't connect things to a larger context to understand, like, oh, these things are actually adding to a larger context. So what I'm telling you to do is actually this. They're just like, oh, pebbles. And I'm like, no, 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 it's not pebbles. It is this like an elegantly thought out way of approaching the situation. But it's explained too esoterically for the other person to fully utilize in the SE.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm actually also thinking about Scar from Lion King. Um, Once again, I used to think that his type was kind of clear, but now I can see three different types for him. They're all NJ types, but I can see him being three of the NJ types, and I'm not really sure which one he is. Maybe because he's a fictional character that's not fully fleshed out enough for you to be able to parse out. But he's definitely an NJ, and he did one of those things where once again, like sometimes even planting the seed of doubt, like, oh, Simba, what did you do here? Like he's aware of everything that happened, but he played his part. He played stupid to an extent so that Simba could act off of that and do certain things that he had orchestrated from the beginning. Like he had orchestrated from Mufasa to everything in that movie, and I hope this isn't a spoiler alert. I hope people have seen Lion King. But yeah, like everybody, like should hopefully know that like Scar was the one who orchestrated for Simba to be out, roaring and whatnot, and then cause the stampede to come by. And then he's like, all right, now when that stampede comes by and everything like that, then I'm going to tell Mufasa, because obviously Mufasa cares about his son. And then when Mufasa tries to help, then he's probably going to get killed by the stampede. But just in case if he doesn't get killed by the stampede, and just in case if Simba somehow doesn't get killed by the stampede, because I do know my brother and he'd probably be able to save them, then I'm going to be on standby so that I can just kill him myself. And lo and behold, he was able to do that. Even with, how he got Simba to go into the elephant graveyard. He's like, oh, but I can't possibly tell you that. When he knows that Simba's curiosity is going to be like, no, tell me. He's like, well, only brave people go out to the elephant graveyard. And it's like, obviously he knows that Simba is going to want to go to the elephant graveyard, where he was also trying to orchestrate for Simba to die. So all of these seed plantings, like, I know that by giving you this information, you are going to do this. In the same sense, I think that's why also a lot of NJs, personally, I think especially NFJs, they withhold a lot of information, because it's like, I know if I tell you this, if you are given this information, you are probably going to do this with the information. It's going to make you panic. It's going to give you certain anxiety. It's going to do this, and it's only going to cause more damage than good. So it's best to leave you in the dark, which I know has its own ethical values and stuff like that to it. But at the end of the day, that's kind of like how like they operate a lot of times, not all, but I think that's like a big thing there. And yeah, I feel like even since we've been in a very abstract realm with this, and I've been trying to give examples because I knew that this would be like a very abstract topic. But I think that one like in real life example could be something as small as, if I wanted my friend to, like, if I knew that my friend liked a certain girl, and I knew that he was too afraid to talk to her, and I didn't want the girl to know that he liked her and that the girl should go talk to him, then maybe what I'd end up finding out is like, oh, they have this common interest. Like, the girl is really into Star Wars. Okay, interesting. My friend is really into Star Wars. Oh, we're both like, the girl's heading over to this party. So I might be like, yo, to my friend, like, we should hit this party. You know what? We should both wear Star Wars, or you should wear this Star Wars shirt or whatever, like that. Something that won't give it away. So that it's like, why should I wear Star Wars shirt? But like just something like, oh yeah, we can both wear like this cool Star Wars shirt. Like, I bought you the Star Wars shirt. I don't know. And then when we go to the party, then I could find a way for the girl to notice him, and then, yo, I really like your shirt. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, so-and-so is talking to me. And then, if we're both wearing it, then I could like bring in the conversation even more, use it as an opportunity to talk up my friend, leave them alone. Boom. That's a very mild example, or even like a little bit of a bigger example to bring like a real life concrete thing, like a little bit of what Scar might have
Yeah.
done. Joyce, there was someone who me and Joyce believed to have been mistyped. And when I brought it up to Joyce, like, oh, we should like interview this person or whatever. And Joyce like, no, I think that person's like mistyped, but I'm afraid to tell them. And I'm like, well, then why don't we just say, okay, before we can put you on our show, we need to have a profiling session with you, just to vet, things and everything like that. And Joyce is like, no, because people get very offended and personal when they find out they're a type that they're not, if they're attached, and this, that. So what I ended up doing was I had a casual conversation with the person, and throughout the conversation, and this is probably what you mean by like being more forthright and bold, throughout the conversation, it was like an hour, maybe 2 hour conversation. It was casual, nonchalant, but like I would throw in there stuff like, yeah, but there's so many people who, when they get profiled, they find out that there's something that they never would have expected and all of that. But no, you're probably not mistyped. You're just definitely different from every other type that I've seen with your type. Oh, well, what do you mean by that? Oh, just how you do this and how you do that and this, that. But, you're just probably like really special. Oh, yeah, okay. It's like, yeah, but you know what I really don't like? Sometimes like people, like they'll be like in profiling sessions, and then they'll answer in a way that they think that, oh, I know that they're asking about FE versus FI, so I have to answer in the FE way, even though I relate more to the FI way. And it's like, no, just answer what's most resonating with you, and don't try to like fit into the personality type that you think that you are. Just say who you are, because the personality type is supposed to explain you, not you explain the personality type kind of thing. And I was like, but yeah, what can you do about that? And then she's all like, oh well, I could see how people would probably do that. Um, Maybe I've sometimes done that before. Really? You think so? I don't know. Like, and the whole time, like, I'm assuming, like, this person is probably mistyped. So all of that to like plant doubts. That's like, hey, I have an idea. How about I just profile you? Yeah, let's have a profiling session. It's like, yeah, and I have faith that you're going to answer honestly throughout the whole entire session. And, whether you think, even though you really feel like you're this type, and you're just an anomaly of this type, it will still be fun to profile you, just blah, blah, blah. And we end up having a profiling session. Joyce was right. The person was mistyped, and the person now feels more free than ever with what type that they are. And yeah, me and Joyce both knew the situation, but I guess like having SE is like higher, like I was more forthright in planting it and orchestrating, plus having FE higher, so then like maneuvering the conversation. On top of the conversation was also authentic in general. Like I had a motivation in the conversation to plant that seed, but I also wanted to actively catch up with the person. So I was kind of just hitting two birds with one stone. And yeah, so stuff like that, I think that those are good examples of this whole seed planting thing, and like knowing how the story will play out. Like how I usually say that a lot of times for me as an ENFJ, so personally speaking, I feel often as if life is a stage, and I'm aware of everybody's script, and I'm aware of like how to write out what's going to happen. And I know what's going to happen in chapter 7, but I can't allow people to know that I know what's going to happen in chapter 7, because then it's going to alter the timeline. And then if they know what's going to happen in chapter 7, they might start anticipating chapter 7, or they might try to change chapter 7, which then will not allow things to happen in chapter 7. And so sometimes that's good, because, hey, if something bad is going to happen in chapter 7, we need to try to find a way to keep that from happening. And even then, I might still not say this is what's going to happen in chapter 7. Rather, I might plant some certain seeds to just turn us away from a danger that they never even knew was coming. And yeah, I think that that's happened a lot. And it's, one could think of it as like a thankless work, but at the end of the day, you're just more grateful that you never went off that cliff, even if people don't know that the whole time you were the one who saved them from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's an element to extroverted feeling that knows what not to say, because it understands how things will land with people, and tactfulness. It knows if you say this, it's going to get this likely reaction from people based on how you see them react.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes there will be this seed planting of knowing, like, I'm just going to make sure I don't say this so that I don't cause that outcome. And then with an ENFP friend of mine accidentally saying the exact thing that shouldn't have been said, and then taking the path all the way to the future vision that I did not want. And then as an IJ, I'm like, oh no, it deviated from what I expected, and now I don't want to deal with it. Oh no, the situation, it's like a Hiroshima bomb just landed on it, and now I just want to kind of migrate or travel away from that destination now. So there's less SE wanting to adapt and adjust and fix it after. It's like, ooh, this situation's gotten so bad that I kind of want to do. That's to really mean something to want to fix it at that point. And so what can happen is, if you know the future path of something and the last domino doesn't fall the way that you want to fall, you can feel disappointment for a future that could never be. And so there's a word that I'm totally mispronouncing called sadade. feeling of nostalgia, almost wanting something that you've had before. It's and so you would typically associate a word like that with fi, right? But there's also an
That's
ni
my
version.
opinion. But yeah, that's how.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you can also take that in a different way if you interpret it in a different way, and you can also call it ni too. So sometimes
Mm.
ni can mourn the future that never was. So
Mm.
you already felt the future like it was a real thing, and now the last domino is not falling the way that you wanted it to. And so there can be a grief over the future that never was allowed to be. And so that particularly is ni because you can feel the future so real that the lack of actualization of it is a death of your vision.
Wow, yeah, that's so true. I need to first of all look up what that word was because that's oh man, yeah, that yeah. And I definitely had a situation like that that I just look back and I'm like, ugh, if I had just done this a little bit differently, this whole future would be pretty different here. Like, oh man, it's crazy stuff. And then you just have to be like, you know what? Forget it. It's whatever. Like, but it's so hard to like let go of that because you just keep on thinking of something that could have been done and just really would have changed a lot in a good way over something small and simple. Ah, you're making me have a moment now, Joyce, of nostalgia of a future that never happened.
It's so ni. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I really like that term. You're always teaching me stuff. This is why I got you to do this show.
Because ni is personal. It's an introverted function. All introverted functions have an element of personalness. So the future feels so real that when it doesn't happen, there is a grief or a mourning period, almost the 5 stages of grief over you saw this this beautiful future picture and now it escapes your hand because of this one small micro SE moment that could have been changed.
And that makes sense too as to how it would happen more with INJs than ENJs, in my opinion, because number one, INJs are NI DOMs, so they're more seeing these dominoes. And then number two, having SE as an inferior function, then they're less likely to exert the energy to actually manifest and cause what they want to happen at times. Whereas like with ENJs and auxiliaries, so they're not always seeing like the full dominoes in that way, but they're seeing enough of the dominoes that they want to like knock down so that that way, like, you know, it's not just about that potential reality, but it's about the reality that we're gonna make this happen. And then also secondly, like because of that SC tertiary, but then also secondly, I think that ENJs are more likely to go with the idea or that quote of successful people don't always make the right decisions. Rather, they make their decisions right. So that whole idea, like even just now, like what I was talking about, like with man, yeah, like I have this nostalgic thought of what could have been about something or whatever that just never happened. It's like I comfort myself by, you know, first of all, like, you know, if for example you have a faith, then you can be like, you know, everything happens for a reason. Like God, who's the bigger grand planner, he did not allow this to happen for his own bigger NI divine reasons that we might not know until days, weeks, months, years later, or just the idea that like, no, things just didn't happen. And since there's nothing that I can do to change that that didn't happen, I have to not only forget that future, but believe that that future could have went wrong or make like whatever I did to not let that future happen or whatever happened to not let that future happen, I have to believe that it happened for a reason and continue to make like a, almost like confirmation bias, like this is why. So that way it comforts you so that you don't yearn and pine for a future that's already like you've missed your window with that, which is a very NISE concept in general. Like you're like finding your window of opportunity. NISE is very much about, you know, licking your finger and then testing out the wind and seeing which way is the wind blowing. When should you let the paper airplane fly? All of that. When should you jump? When should you take action? When should you sit back? How much longer should you perceive things are happening so that you can get a better idea what's going to happen? But if you wait too long because you're trying to perceive, you're going to miss your opportunity. If you move too quickly, you probably won't get enough information. And so there's a really, really, really like centered balance of NISE always watching and having to know when to take action. Whereas like this is a difference between NE and SI, where NESI, like they see possibilities all the time. That's why they're very optimistic a lot of times. And so it's like, I don't necessarily have to, think of the perfect timing all the time. Rather, there's always like different doors, different realities, different multiverses of a sense that we could hop into. Even if I missed that train, even if I missed that window, there's going to be another bus coming soon that I can take advantage of, and I'll just explore that reality instead. Whereas NI is more like, no, I've missed that reality. There's not another bus coming anytime soon. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so the NI-SE polarity can be described as NI insights and SE opportunities. And so it's the unfolding of the NI with the insights about the evolving understanding of how reality works. And the SE, this is the correct opportunity, the timing to make this happen. And so what motivates me, what gives me a sense of urgency, is actually thinking about all the lost futures that will happen if I stay stagnant. And so that's been SE growth for me. I notice the futures that will be lost, the opportunities that will be lost if I stay frozen. And so it's this desire to honor the sacred future by not taking it for granted. Like a huge philosophy that revolves around why I do the things that I do is not taking anything for granted. Because when you do that, you impact the future in a negative way. And so there's this desire, with my relationships, my friendships and anything, I never want to be in a state where I take it for granted, because things become stagnant, they become complacent, they become subpar, or they have the higher likelihood of becoming that if I take it for granted. And so it's this deep desire to not bastardize the future that creates this sense of urgency to act in ways that you may find an INFJ, wow, you do a lot with your life, Joyce, and it's because I don't want to lose the future.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. I totally resonate with that. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I feel like we were able to hopefully flesh out this pretty abstract concept well enough and show both the good, the bad, and the neutral of it. Do you have any final things to add, or do you feel complete?
I feel complete.
Awesome.
And so this was a wonderful chat. Thank you, audience members, for watching. And until next time,
stay sharp.
「あなたを追いかけ